Later, I found out that he had emailed that picture to the girl who he started talking to in early January from eHarmony, the picture that I took on our date for him to meet my friends. Good morning / afternoon. This is your girl Grace. I am here on Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day, although it'll be much later by the time you watch this. So I was just getting all cute for a little date because I am single now. I ain't got no ring on this finger now, so I'm out here dating and ish. Anyway, starting off really silly for something actually pretty serious. I'm going to start a series on narcissism and narcissistic abuse and narcissistic abuse recovery, and I wanted to start with my story. Hope you don't mind the bird noises and just the sound of my neighbors and things like that. I wanted to tell my story, and the reason why is because I went through something that I could not explain to anyone. I could not figure it out. I could not get a handle on it. I couldn't get a hold on it. The only thing that helped me was hearing other people's stories and hearing what happened to them, and that led me to get more information, and that led me to know terms and definitions. And I hope that you can hear once I go back and explain what dynamics were happening. But I'm just going to start from the very beginning. First of all, I'm a super high empath. I've always known I'm an empath, which basically means I take on the feelings of others really strongly, is the first part of it. The second part of it is that I feel things very, very deeply, and I deeply desire to care for other people. Oftentimes, especially for someone like me who was raised with a very high ACE score, my ACE score is probably like a 7 or 8, which means I endured a lot of abuse growing up, a lot of different kinds of abuse, and endured quite a lot of trauma. Sorry, there's a bee going by. I just had to make sure that bee wasn't going to get me. As an adult empath, basically what that has made me is very codependent and very susceptible to codependent relationships. So I've been married twice and divorced twice, sadly. And in my first relationship, in my first marriage, which was 15 years, it was a very long marriage, almost 15 years. My response to my ex's codependency was to become the aggressor. So I was much more aggressive. And then I got married a second time. And in my second marriage is where I experienced something I've never experienced before, a level of pain and trauma that I've never experienced before. I realized that I was codependent on him. As a codependent, you are highly susceptible to people taking advantage of you, lying to you, being abusive to you in many different ways. And you're very susceptible to try to recreate the trauma of your childhood. And maybe you think that you can get it fixed, but that's not how you go about it. But that's what a lot of people do. Okay, so what happened was I was very, very vulnerable. I was financially vulnerable. I was physically vulnerable. I was maybe going to get evicted. I had just lost a job. I had lost a lot of friends and a lot of support. And it was very, very, very messy. I was really vulnerable, and I really thought what I needed was a new man, because what solves all problems? Men. That's what I thought. Okay, I know it's annoying, but that's what I thought. So I got on eHarmony and I saw this guy who was like super hot. I mean, I was just like, he is like super hot, and he had this like really pretty smile. His profile picture was him smiling in like a superhero t-shirt. Not a lot of guys do that on dating apps. We connected, decided to talk that weekend. We ended up talking for about 4 hours, and one thing I did notice in that conversation was that he was agreeing with a lot of the stuff that I said that I liked and did. I'll tell you that later, more about that later. It's not really a big deal, but when a lot of things add up, then you realize later in hindsight. But he was agreeing with a lot of the stuff I was saying, things that I was passionate about. I am very passionate about Black Lives Matter. He was agreeing with a lot of things that I'm super passionate about. I'm really passionate about the Black community. I'm really passionate about Black women especially, and that's why my platform is towards Black women, because I have experienced so many different challenges as a Black woman that have nearly taken me out. So I was talking about that, and I was telling him everything I was passionate about, and he was like, oh yes, me too, literally. Although the Me Too movement hadn't started yet, but if it had, he would agree to that too. So the reason why this is important in hindsight is because after we were married, later on he became diametrically opposed to almost every single thing I stood for, everything I believed in passionately, and all of the core parts of my identity. He became vehemently opposed in extremely emotionally violent and bullying ways. Not only that, but it was also a surprise to me. His early agreement with me on everything turned out to be just another love bombing tactic. I just noticed like we have so much in common. Like how crazy is that, especially about my biggest passions? So that was a red flag that I ignored. Although I think at that point when you're literally just meeting someone, unless you're very, very in touch with your intuition and the things happening in your body, you're probably not going to be able to know that that's a red flag, which I didn't at all. So we went out on our first date 3 days after that. Just to give you a timeline, we connected on eHarmony on Saturday. We chatted via eHarmony on Sunday. Then we spoke Sunday night on the phone for 4 hours. We decided on Wednesday to have a Skype call. We had a Skype call on Wednesday for about, I would say, 2-3 hours. And then we decided to meet that Friday or Saturday. I drove out to him because it was a couple-hour drive away. And when we met later on, we felt like it was love at first sight. So when he walked in the door, I was like, oh my God. Like, I felt like I had never seen another living human like that beautiful. I just thought he was like just stunning. I loved his style. I loved his jeans. I loved everything. I just was like, his face, the way he smiled at me. When I was walking towards the kitchen to meet his dad was there. His whole family was there. So I thought it was really interesting that I was meeting his family on the first date. He came up behind me and hugged me, and his dad actually decided to take a picture of it because his dad had his camera ready because he had told his dad that I was someone who could be very significant to him. His dad took a picture, so we actually have that picture, but I was smiling, and I just remember thinking like, this is like the best feeling in the world. So later on, we both said that we both felt like it was love at first sight. That is a huge red flag. Feeling like you're in love at first sight is a huge red flag on both of our parts. And a subconscious level, there is usually something going on deeper under the surface that you cannot tell if you feel like you fell in love at first sight. So that's number 2. And it's not even been a week yet, y'all. So we decide while we're on the date that we are going to be a couple. The night we met, yes, we decided the night we met that we are going to be a committed couple on our first date, where we fell in love after 7 days of knowing. So that's red flag number 3. I don't feel like I need to go into why that's a big red flag, but let's just say it is. That Saturday to Sunday was our date. Then that coming Wednesday was Christmas. So he went home. He texted me that he told his mother that I was the woman he was going to marry. And I remember just being like, oh shit, like this dude is like hella into me. I was not seeing that as a red flag, that it hadn't really been 2 weeks yet that we knew each other. But I was like, he is obviously wild about me. He obviously thinks I'm amazing. He obviously this, he obviously that. So then that next weekend we had another date. On that date, we told each other that we loved each other. So if you're keeping track, that's 2 weeks. We first of all slept together for the first time, and then he told me he loved me, not during sex. But I remember thinking, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. I can't believe I've only been on eHarmony for just a few months and I've already found the love of my life. And the way that he spoke to me, like he just made me feel like I was his entire world and I was everything he'd been waiting for. And I was so different from all the women that he had ever dated, and I was so beautiful, and how much he loved my body and how much he loved my hair, and he loved how I kept myself and presented myself, and how I was different than other black girls, which should have tipped me off again. That was another red flag. But essentially, he made me feel like I was like the center of his universe, and I really hadn't ever felt like that. And the reason why is because of a phenomenon called love bombing. I had never been love bombed before. Not like this level, where it was just like everything about you is perfection. I mean, he didn't use those words, but I could tell that he really, what I thought was just hella into me. So I was just like, I can't believe my luck. Like, this feels too good to be true. That's another red flag. If a relationship feels like it's too good to be true, it usually is. It usually is, sis. Or there's something off. There should be things that give you pause. There should be things that make you think, I want to think. I'd like to get to know more. I need more information. But certainly within 2 to 3 weeks, it should not feel like it's too good to be true. In about 3 weeks or so, we both had work trips, and they just happened to be in the same city. So we were both going to be traveling to Ohio. So we decided to get a hotel there, have a couple nights in a hotel in the middle of our work trip because we could still basically commute. So it seemed like it was perfect. And while we were there, we were talking about babies and marriage, and he was like, I really do want to marry you. And I was just like, this is so amazing. It's, again, too good to be true. And at that point, we talked about how we both wanted to have a baby because we were getting older. Like at that time, I think I was 38 or 39 and he was 38 or 39, like we're the same age. So we talked about how if we're going to get married, we should get married soon because we want to have a baby. We want to have a baby in the context of marriage. And then we were like, maybe we should just start trying to have a baby now. Like, why wait till we get married? Because I'm getting older. I'm almost 39. You know, my reproductive years are slowing down. We need to hurry this ish up. So we're talking about that, and we're talking about getting married, having babies. And I was just like, this is like everything I ever dreamed of. Then somehow we got started talking about lying, and I just was like, listen, I just want to be honest with you. Like, I struggled with lying in my first marriage, and that's really one of the huge ways I sabotaged it. And he was like, I've never struggled with cheating. I've never struggled with flirting, and I don't lie, and I will never lie to you. He just looked at me so sincere, like, I will never lie to you. And I don't struggle with that. Like, that's just not my struggle, so that won't be my struggle. And I was just like, hearts popping out of my eyeballs, so happy, right? So I found out later that on that exact day that he told me he doesn't struggle with cheating or ever lie, that he actually had just reached out to another woman he met on eHarmony. So he had emailed her. Basically, it was like, hey, it's so-and-so, and I'm just wondering how you're doing and what's up and something like that. And I saw these emails, by the way, and she responded back, oh my gosh, I was so surprised to hear from you, because there had been like a lapse in his communication with her while he was fraternizing with me and getting together with me and promising me marriage and a baby and never cheating and never lying. Also, when we decided to become a couple, I do remember one of the things I said to him, like, I know you've been on the Match app and I know you are on eHarmony, like, do you need to get off those apps? And he was like, yeah, I'll take care of it. And he asked me, and I was like, yeah, I'm already off them. Later, I found out that he never got off of Match at all. There was no lapse in his Match emails. And in fact, he had opened up every single one of those emails from Match until 10 months into our marriage. I still don't know the extent of his interactions on Match. I just know that some of those emails were starred. There were like 3 emails that were in the important folder in his Gmail. He remains to tell me that he was not active on it. He just didn't use it. He got the emails to see who was interested in him, and it was just out of curiosity, and that he never communicated with any of those other women. So, you know, that was that. But he says he doesn't know how they got started or how they got into the important folder. So yeah, that was fun when I found those emails. Then we were super in love. Late January, I invited him to meet my friends. I thought, this is really significant. I would love for him to meet my friends. He came out with me to a big party with a bunch of my friends. He was looking really cute, and so I was like, let's take some selfies. So we took selfies, and then he was like, take a picture of me on the couch. And he got in a pose. I took a picture, and it was like really cute picture. And so he was like, send that to me. So I sent it to him, and then he posted it at some point, you know, on his Facebook or whatever. Later, I found out that he had emailed that picture to the girl who he started talking to in early January from eHarmony, the picture that I took on our date for him to meet my friends. I didn't know any of this at the time, though. I'm just like, we are so in love, we're everything. He set up like this amazing Valentine's Day date for me. He wrote eHarmony. He told him how we connected, how we fell in love at first sight, how I was the most beautiful, amazing woman he'd ever seen. He told eHarmony that we were together, and thank you for bringing him the love of his life, eHarmony. He printed it out for me, and eHarmony sent us back a PDF of all our interactions. He took me to a really expensive restaurant. We walked downtown Chicago. It was beautiful. I felt like the best Valentine's Day I had ever had in my life. The first bigger red flag where I knew something was really wrong was things were still going really well. About March, we had an argument about something in our sexual relationship, and I thought I was being very careful. I thought it was a fair request that I was requesting. I won't go into it because that's just awkward. He flipped out. He went from actually we were in the act to getting up and standing up and flipping out. I was really not used to this because I was married for 15 years, as I mentioned before. And when there were requests, especially during the experience, we would just say, oh, okay, well, how would you like that request to be met? This way or that way or any way? Or how can I serve, basically? So me asking for something specific didn't, to me, feel like that big of a deal. Apparently for him, it did feel like a really big deal. And we have never really debriefed this. We've debriefed a lot of stuff, but not this. When that happened, he stood up and he got really angry and he started yelling, and he said some things that I thought were pretty belittling. And then he also stated that he was not going to do such and such thing, which, you know, was fine because I'm all about boundaries no matter whose it is. It goes both ways. Nobody should do anything they're uncomfortable with. But the response of him saying, I will not do this, and why are you asking, and all this stuff was like really over the top. And I remember just being like so surprised. I was stunned because this was the first time he'd ever been what I thought was disrespectful. Really disrespectful tone, really disrespectful attitude. Even just the way he went about it, you know. I was really confused. And then he like actually stormed off and went into the living room. And then like after I got dressed and everything and came out, and I was just like, I'm flabbergasted, like you had that response. And I thought that if I communicated like this really hurt me and I'm so confused why you acted like that he would understand, but he didn't. And it took kind of a long time. Like I just thought if I keep communicating, like I will be able to convince him that response was really over the top. And eventually after like an hour and a half, I did convince him. And then he told me, I will never forget these words. He said, don't ever let me treat you like that again. That was really unfair. And I remember thinking like, oh, I'm so lucky. Like he's telling me, don't ever put up with my BS. Don't ever da-da-da. But I realize in hindsight he should have said, I will never treat you like that again. It is my responsibility to treat you in a fair and respectful way. It's my responsibility to manage my emotions. But I feel like that big first fight set a precedent for literally the rest of our marriage, which is you, Grace, you be responsible for my emotions and my anger and my responses, and keep trying to be responsible for them no matter what I do or how much shit I give you. It was interesting, and I remember being very impressed with the way he handled it though, which in hindsight is so utterly ridiculous. So that was the first thing. So I think I'm going to stop there because sometimes, and I'm going to interpret now, sometimes when you experience something called narcissistic abuse, there is a term for when things start to go bad, and that is when their mask falls off. And that was the first time that his mask fell off, although he re-straightened it quickly. But that was the first time, and I interpret it as I did something to cause that, and now I need to be responsible for myself and responsible for him so that I don't do anything else to cause it. So I'm gonna stop right there, and I will come back for part 2, 3, and 4. Bye, y'all. I forgot one story that I wanted to tell y'all real quick. That was one of the major red flags that I just remembered just now. But when we were out on our first date, we did a Saturday to a Sunday morning. On Sunday morning, I stayed at his parents' house. On Sunday morning, we went to church, and then we went out to breakfast. And so we were just talking. And again, by this point, we already decided we're going to be a couple of things were pretty intense. And so we're talking, and so we're talking about like my first marriage. Okay, so we're out to breakfast on Sunday morning for the second part of our day. We went to church, and then we went out to breakfast. And so we're just talking about our first marriages, and I was telling him some stories about my ex. And so I was like, tell me some stories about how things went, like how long were you married and what happened. And I was like, what's her name? And he was like, oh, then he said, what's that broad's name? And then he was like going like this, like it'll come to me. And I remember thinking, why is he pretending like he doesn't know her name? Like, is he afraid I'm gonna Facebook stalk her or something? Which I completely was and eventually did, but I couldn't figure it out. So I said, come on, like you can tell me, like I've told you some pretty intense stuff. And he was like, no, I really don't remember. It took him a while. I would say about a minute or two in actual real time, 120 seconds. And then he finally told me her name, and that slightly stuck out to me as a red flag. At this point now, that's a huge red flag. I would never be with a man who does not remember the name of someone that made a very significant commitment to, because when you don't remember someone's name, that's how much you did not give a F about them. You discarded them completely and so thoroughly that you've blocked out their name. That's a huge red flag. I didn't perceive that at the time, but I remember the names of the boys that I liked in 7th grade, 3rd grade, and every boy that I had any significance with, I remember their name. The ones I liked, the only ones whose names I don't remember are the ones who literally meant nothing to me. You know, I realized that later, that she didn't mean anything to him, but that should have been a clue. And then also just the length of time. Apparently they met and were married within 6 months, and then they were married for 3 months, and then apparently she kicked him out and it was over. That story also did not worry me so much, but I just thought like, well, they knew within 3 months, you know, who can blame them? And then the other thing is, I didn't know at the time he had already been married before that too, and he didn't tell me that. He didn't tell me that that was his second marriage. And so when we were just about to get married, we were about to do the same pattern, which is to meet someone and marry them very quickly, he confessed to me that he had had 2 marriages already and I would be his 3rd. And I do remember that being very jarring, because I was like, why are you telling me now as opposed to earlier? Because this was in April when he told me that, as opposed to like December when we met. Like, by the way, I've been married twice. So later found out that that first marriage was met and married within 2 weeks and was over a week later. Second marriage, met and married in 6 months and was over 3 months later. Then with us, met and married within 8 months. And later I found out in various ways that were not all upfront that I was his 6th fiance. Again, that's the kind of thing you might want to know earlier, because obviously there's some issues committing if you've been engaged 6 times and you're their 6th fiance and then you're their 3rd wife in a very similar pattern. But these things were disclosed so slowly over time, and some of them I just found out randomly. Like, I just found out randomly that he had been engaged to this one person through some emails. I know I was snooping, but I found out. And then later I found out by looking at his blog that he had been engaged to somebody else. Then later I found out that that person he was engaged to, and I mean months and months and months later, that he left her on the spot for another woman that he met and would have married. She wanted to, but he didn't. And just so much stuff that I realized establishes a pattern. But he hadn't all put it all together, and I did. Well, maybe he did, but I was putting it together after we were married, after I was pregnant, after I had a baby, after I realized that there had been other people all along. So I was being lied to, despite the "I will never lie to you, baby" claims. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment.